Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sherry.
And together, we are
the Traveling Professors.
Welcome to show number 89. We're back in Athens. We returned to Athens from Mykonos, and normally we would have stayed just one day. But if you remember, when we went off on our cruise through the islands, they had the big strike, and so we were in Athens for 3 extra days before going on out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you to some of the places that we saw during that 3 days while we're waiting to go to the island of Rhodes. And so today, we'll be taking a walking tour of the Temple of Poseidon at Sounion, as well as the trip down. Unfortunately, it rained most of the time, with the exception of the time that we were at the temple when the sun came out. Well, here's our trusty map. Now today, this is a side trip. It was only, I think, 3 or 4 hours down and back. So we were going to leave from Athens, and we're going to go down the coastline all the way to the tip of Attica, down here where you see this point, which is Sounion. And that is the point where the Temple of Poseidon is located. And then we'll come back exactly the same way. So it doesn't make any difference which side of the bus you're on when you take this tour, because you'll see everything anyway when it turns around. But I need to talk about something first. A little mythology here. Now we'll go back here to the Acropolis. Remember, this is rebuilt after the Persians destroyed it in the Second Persian War. But the history of this and how we end up with Poseidon down on the tip of the Attica and Athena up here when Athens is a seagoing nation is a little interesting. And of course, the Greeks have a good explanation. People have lived here in Athens, in this area, for over 7,000 years. And the legend has it that the original name of the town was Cecropia, because it was inhabited by Cecrops, a strange half-man, half-snake, who founded the city. However, the gods on Olympus saw it was a lovely piece of land, and they wanted it named after them, and they wanted themselves to be patrons. And the most persistent rivals were, of course, Poseidon, the sea god, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom. So to solve this, Zeus decided that each one of them would make a gift to the city, and Cecrops would decide which gift was best, and therefore which god would be the patron of the city. Now I'll tell you there are other versions of this story, but this is the standard one. So on a sunny day, Cecrops and the residents of the city went up to the high hill to the Acropolis to watch the gods give their gifts. Well, Poseidon is first, and he struck a rock with his trident, causing a spring of water to gush forth from the ground. Now this signified he was assuring the citizens with water, and therefore they wouldn't face any time of drought. However, the people were not exactly enchanted with his gift, because the water from the spring tasted salty, just like the water of the sea over which Poseidon ruled. Now next, it was Athena's turn. She planted a seed in the ground, which grew up to become a lovely olive tree. The citizens liked the olive tree better because it would give them food, oil, and firewood. And with one voice, they loudly acclaimed Athena as their benefactress. Now, there is a version that talks about 2 things. One is voting, and one is women voting. One version is that after the gifts were given out, the people voted. And the men voted for Poseidon, and the women voted for Athena. And there were more women than there were men, therefore they won. And after that, eventually the women had their vote taken away from them. But at any rate, Athena wins. Now, it's worth mentioning that there is a point of reality here, because there are olive trees found today all over Athens, particularly in the suburbs. And the city, indeed, today faces all sorts of problems with water, especially in the summer. So water to Athens is actually supplied from a lake that's close to modern-day Thebes and the Moronos River in Phocadia, as well as the lake at Marathon. I just want to use this to point out some important factors that might come into play perhaps in another show. But down here at Sounion, down here on the point, they had cults to the various gods as far back as the 11th century BCE. But a temple to Poseidon or Athena would not have been built until probably around 700 BCE. The one that we're going to look at and visit, they have found from the archaeological excavations, which were actually done in the late 1800s, an archaic temple underneath it. But you can see you have a beautiful view. You have a view of the whole area of ships coming in and out of Piraeus. You have Crete is directly south. Here you have the island of Aegina, which was a competitor of Athens prior to the Persian Wars. And then here is the island of Salamis, which will come into play during the Second Persian War. And of course you have Corinth over here on this side. This whole body of water that you see here is known as the Saronic Gulf. So having a temple/lookout at Sounion is a pretty pretty good idea. Well, we left our hotel in Athens and headed to the Amalia Hotel, because remember, it was full as a result of the strike, to get on our bus. But this is what we were seeing. This is some of the demonstrations that were going on to try and convince the parliament not to cut the pensions for the people of Greece to get the European aid. But in the end, after 3 days of heavy striking, it was passed by a very close margin. And so we get on our bus and we head towards Sounion. It's not really a very long trip, but it was rainy that day, as you can see with the pictures. And one of the places we go by this is where the old airport used to be, but now they're using it for refugees from Syria. I'm not sure whether there are any refugees left there or not. We'll be going up the same way and coming back the same way, so it didn't make any difference what side of the bus you were on. And since it was raining, I was hoping that it would get better at the end when we came back, so we were on the inside. So here's one of the tunnels that they cut through the mountains when we get further south, and then you see the terrain in the area. Here we have one of the hillsides with village near it. Here's another one, and you can see the threatening clouds. And then here's one where the sun begins to peek in and out, and ultimately it did come out when we get to Sounion. And finally, after making, turns and what have you along the coast, I was able to take this picture. You see the Temple of Poseidon on top, and then this whole area up in here was the precinct of the temple. And what you can't see at this point is right around here in this area, there's a cave, and they used to keep one of the Persian ships from the Battle of Salamis here for special occasions. They actually kept two of them, and there would be an exchange of the ships from Athens to here on the anniversary. And then here we are coming around into the little bay. Temple is up off to the left-hand side of the screen. And then we finally reach the location of the parking lot just south of the temple. And you can see the sun is trying really hard to come out. And so we start walking up. Once we got off the bus, we were told how long we were going to be here. We were going to be here about 35 or 40 minutes. So that means that there may not be enough time to, just kind of soak in what we're seeing. So what will happen is, and when this takes place, this is what Sherry and I generally do. Once we reach the point where they've talked to us and we're right in the middle, then we both split off and go in opposite directions and take pictures and then meet up on the other side. It's not a difficult walk up. That was not too bad. When we look back, here's a view of the little town and the bay area. And then this is a site of excavation. Probably, I believe this is where the site of the original Temple of Athena was located. All sorts of temples that have been here. Remember, I called it a cult site for a long period of time. And then we come to the fortification. It has an enclosed wall. The core of the whole area has enclosed for protection, and it had a gateway, a propylae gateway, and it had two covered walkways or porticos. So this is part of the wall that would have gone around it for protection, because this was a very wealthy temple. And then here you see the gradient as you're going up towards the temple. You can see some of the other buildings that were associated with it and what is there today. And then this is a map from the site that shows the temple, shows the wall, which went all the way down to either side, but of course the depth of the wall, the most important part of it, is up here, which is actually accessible. Of course, then you have down to the sacred cave. And part of the business with the ship there too is that in case this was attacked by pirates or something, they could put their gold or whatever in the ship and try to get away. So it gave them an out. So we're getting a little closer to the temple. This was built by Pericles. So this temple was constructed from 444 to 440 BCE. And of course, that's at the height of Athens under Pericles, as he's building the Parthenon, rebuilding the city of Athens as well. And so here's a nice view that you see coming up. Temple was built on 3 steps called stylobates. They were 102 feet by 44 feet, and it's supported by a 3-foot high plinth to compensate for the slope of the ground. It has 6 columns across the front, and then 13 columns down the side, 34 in all. And the columns were 20 feet high and 3 feet 3 inches in diameter. They have a particular slender and elegant appearance. It's more Ionic than it is Doric, with 16 rather than the usual 20 flutes on the columns. Then here we get up a little closer, and you can see on the other side of the tree reinforcing for this side. And then you can see in this one the 3 stylobates, the 3 flat slabs that were the foundation of it. And some of the pillars were in place, and some of them have been put back together again and put in place. The excavation took place in the 1890s to early 1900. You can see in this one that it's starting to get a little sunny out. The downside is when you come in at the end of the day like we did, your problem is the sun is going to be directly in your face. So you can take a tour down here for sunrise. So if that's what you'd like to do, that will work out very well. Looking at the front of the temple from this angle, get the nice color that the sun provides. I want to mention that inside of it was this gigantic statue of Poseidon. It was 20 feet tall, made out of bronze, and went all the way to the ceiling. So it would have looked out, you'd have opened the doors, the sun would have come up and hit that bronze statue. It would have been just incredible. And wandering around the side, here you can see the side of the temple with its columns. And then turning around, looking over the edge. Now, this is the view you have from up here at Sounion. Now, looking directly out to the east, you would be looking directly towards Crete. The story of the naming of the Aegean Sea goes like this. It goes after King Aegeus, who sent his son Theseus to Crete as part of the sacrifices for the Minotaur. And he instructed his son that when he came back, if he was alive, to put a white sail up, and if not, a black sail would be in place. Well, after killing the Minotaur and running off with the priestess, he forgot those instructions. So when he sailed into the Saronic Gulf, from this particular position, you would have seen the black sail a long ways off. And Aegeus, seeing that, committed suicide. Now, whether he jumped from here, which would be, if you're looking for the earliest warning that a ship was coming, this would be it. He certainly didn't jump from the Acropolis, but he did jump to his death. And they then named the sea after him. So if he's going to commit suicide in Athens, he's going to have to get a lot closer. I always use it that this is the location where Aegeus jumped. So here we are walking down the side, looking at the side of it, and you come to the corner, you get a little closer view of the three stylobates. And then here's the view looking back towards Athens. You can see the island in the fog over here. That's Aegina. Here we are directly behind it, down the slope a little bit. Here's the view of it once you get all the way down a little bit, looking back up. And fortunately, we had someone in our group, we took pictures of people after we were finished doing what we needed to do. So they took this nice picture of Sherry and I with the Temple of Sounion in the background. And then we're getting a little further away as our time is running out. It's time to head back down to the bus. To get an idea of what this looks from a different perspective, we bought a nice postcard. So here's the aerial view of the Sounion Temple of Poseidon. And there's, if you play the game Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the view that they created for that video game, move things around a little bit, but that's all right. You get to see the part with the temple. Well, it's time to head back to Athens, but at least we're on the right side of the bus. So here we are coming down from the temple into the little town, and there's a view out into their harbor. And then we go around the next hill, and there's the Aegean Sea with one of the pieces of land. And we come along, and as we get closer, you see several of these small little islands. There's little islands all along the coast. And then here's a tunnel that we went through from another direction. And then we're getting closer to Athens. You start getting into the suburbs. And then eventually, you know you're in the suburbs of Athens because here is the metro line, which runs down this direction. So we then went back to our hotel and took a nap. And then later on that evening, we went back to our favorite restaurants in this particular area in Athens and talked to our good friend Chris. Sherry and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.